Okay, well, we are into the home stretch with our final two chapters. This text sort of saves for last the things that a lot of times students most closely associate with psychology, disorders and their treatment. Hopefully I've made the case that psychology is about a lot more than psychological disorders and treatment, but we definitely have got to talk about these issues if you're going to be a true Psychology 100 survivor. All right. So what is a psychological disorder? First off, the first criteria for a behavior to be labeled as disordered is that it needs to be atypical. I gave you some synonyms for the word atypical there, right? It means it's uncommon, it's unusual, it's abnormal. Abnormal does not necessarily mean bad. It means it is outside the normal range in a normal distribution. So that means that less than 15% of people behave in this end of the extreme and 15% in this end of the extreme. So abnormal does not necessarily mean bad. When I give exams, the people who get A's are abnormal. It's much more normal, typical, common for students to get C's. But so it's atypical, it's abnormal to get an A, but I don't think anybody would think that an A would be bad, right? So it's not necessarily bad. The behavior is not necessarily bad. To be a disorder, the behavior has to be distressing. Okay, so either you are bothered by your own behavior or other people are bothered by your own behavior. Now, what do we mean by bothering? Well, it actually means two different things, and both of them could be what we're talking about, depending on the disorder. It could be that other people are bothered or you're bothered because you're worried about your own state. They're worried about your state. They're worried about your mental health. They're like, that behavior does not seem normal. I'm concerned. So the bother could be concern. The other kind of bother is that it could be literally annoying to yourself or to others. I mean, all of us have behaviors that we sometimes think, why do I do that? That is so annoying that repeatedly I procrastinate until the very last minute and then I have to rush. Or, why do I get so wrapped up in some stupid movie and just absolutely have got to see the end of it and refuse to just go to sleep on time? Why? Why do I do this, right? We could mean that. We're annoying ourselves, or we're annoying other people. Like the schizophrenic who's in the McDonald's shouting things is surely bothering other people, right? So it could be that you're annoying, or it could be that you're raising concern, either in yourself or others. Okay. Maladaptive. The third criteria that must be present for your behavior to be considered a disorder is that the behavior needs to be maladaptive. Maladaptive means that it runs contrary to ensuring health. It runs contrary to behavior that will ensure your survival. So maladaptive behaviors do things that will interfere with your health. Or it could be a little less dramatic than that. It could be that the behavior interferes with your daily living. It makes it impossible for you to get to work on time, or something like that. It makes it impossible for you to sleep on a normal schedule, and therefore you're tired at work. Stuff like that. That's considered maladaptive. And then finally, unjustifiable. The final and fourth criteria that must be present, all four of these have got to be present all together in order for you to be diagnosed with a disorder, is that the behavior has to be unjustifiable. There's no rational reason for you to be behaving this way or thinking this way. So let me give you an example, and then we'll talk about when it would be considered a disorder and when it wouldn't be. Okay, so the woman in the picture is depressed. So let's say that this woman has been sleeping 16 hours a day, and then the remaining 8 hours of the day she sort of just lays on the couch flipping through the channels, doesn't really watch anything on TV, but just keeps it on and stares at it. Other people in the household are concerned about her behavior. They're worried that she's not going to get out of this state, that she's going to sort of just become one with the couch or one with the bed. Her behavior is maladaptive. She hasn't been to work for weeks and is in jeopardy of losing her job. But let's say that she's behaving this way in the 3 weeks following the sudden death in a car accident of her beloved father. now suddenly we have a justification for why she's acting like this. It's only been 3 weeks. You know, in our society, we don't even like to give you 3 weeks to mourn. But I mean, let's be honest. It's only been 3 weeks. It was a sudden and shocking demise, and she's having trouble moving forward. We should give you a little bit of time, right? We should give you a little time when there's a justification. Let's say that she's got all the exact same symptoms. Everything is exactly the same, but nothing acutely happened that triggered her to be behaving that way. There's no justification for why she's acting this way. She's just out of nowhere. And she says, I have no idea. Just all of a sudden, I started feeling like, what's even the point? I don't even understand why I should bother getting up and getting dressed and going to work. It's like the same thing every day. What's the point? Without a justification, now we're talking about something that's probably disordered. Now, are we concerned for our friend who's lost her father and can't seem to get her feet back underneath her and, start moving through life again? Absolutely, we're concerned. But we are not necessarily at that point where we're going to label it a disorder because she has that acute justification. So for a lot of people, the justification is the key thing. Now, I'm going to give you one other example. When I was a kid, my brother had a friend who was a really sweet, fun, really nice kid. I was younger than my brother. This guy was my brother's age. So they were like, I think they were seniors, and I was a freshman at the time that this happened in high school. And the friend came over one day with his T-shirt on over his head, like hanging down like it was hair, right? With the neckband like a headband, and then the rest of his shirt hanging down. And that's not that unusual for skateboarders in Southern California. You get hot and then you don't want to carry your shirt, so you wear it on your head. Okay, but he had another shirt on. So he was like wearing a shirt, and then he had a shirt on his head. And so we were like, what's up with your T-shirt hair, right? What are you doing? And he said, well, I didn't want people to see, but, I trust you guys, and I know you won't laugh. So he took the T-shirt off of his head, and he had his head wrapped in tinfoil. And we were like, okay, so we're not supposed to laugh, but what is that? Now, remember, I was 14 years old, and I've never seen a person with tinfoil on his head before. So I'm like, and I've known this kid for probably 3 years at this point. I'm like, what's going on, right? Okay, so he's doing something very atypical. We're concerned for him. I don't know if we, at that time, were aware of any kind of maladaptive behaviors that he might have been engaged in, but he had 2 of these 4 criteria met. And then he tried to provide a justification for why he had tinfoil on his head. He told us that he had been sitting on his motorcycle with no helmet on. He was just sitting on the motorcycle at the stoplight, and he said it felt like a force from above him shoved him off of his motorcycle and onto the ground. And it happened so suddenly that he just fell to the ground and he hit his head on the asphalt. And he figured he was okay, got back on his motorcycle, went about his business. But he said, I think that was the moment when the space people took the opportunity to put a receiver in my head, that maybe there was a small crack in my skull, and they were able to put the receiver in my head, and ever since then I've been receiving messages from outer space. Okay, so definitely atypical, right? And we were definitely concerned for him at that point. But I'd like to point out that though he came up with a justification for why he had tinfoil on his head, this does not fall under the category of rational, right? That was definitely not an explanation that would make us say, okay, well, that makes sense. Tinfoil on your head, what else would a person do? I mean, this was obviously part of his symptoms, the explanation that he gave us. Well, later his mother found out about his behaviors when apparently he wrapped the family refrigerator in tinfoil. Tinfoil is the magic thing for people who feel like they're getting messages from outside of their head. So he thought that the locus of the messages was the refrigerator. So he wrapped that in tinfoil, and that's when his mother realized something was wrong. And he was ultimately diagnosed with schizophrenia. But I just wanted to give you sort of different kinds of symptoms and show you that sometimes people try and justify their behavior, but the justification is not rational. Okay, let's go ahead and take a little break there, and we'll come back and we'll dive into the first category of disorders, which are the anxiety disorders.